So now we have a 2011 GMC Sierra 4x4 crew cab, and the customer has a laundry list of complaints. First of all, his air conditioning doesn't work. Transmission lines are potentially leaking. He's got a leak at the back of the engine we're going to have a look at. He also complained that in the winter it wouldn't turn over at times, and he had to disconnect and reconnect the battery to get it to work. Intermittent, no crank. Intermittently won't shift into gear when started. After a few seconds it shifts into drive, but then Stabilitrac and ABS lights come on. And he also has said he's had the front differential replaced about 5 months ago, but he doesn't think the 4x4 is working again. So we're going to start with a network scan on this thing, and as you can see, I've ID'd the vehicle. So we're going to do an all-system DTC scan and see if it gives us some direction on the Stabilitrac codes and transmission problem. Engine misfire detected. What is it, misfire day today? Brake switch circuit. I've had brake switch problems on these trucks. I'll have to check the high-mounted brake light, make sure it's working, and the brake light's on the back. Brake switch. Left front side deployment loop resistance above threshold, right front side deployment loop above threshold, left front side impact sensor erratic. So that's why the airbag light is on, which he did not mention, by the way. Tire pressure sensors are invalid, so it probably needs a couple of tire pressure sensors. Now it's saying left front. That's basically saying all four. Cellular phone select service switch open, whatever. Random cylinder misfire. He didn't mention anything about a misfire, but he did mention, I wonder if the misfire is causing the Stabilitrac system to be disabled. Because normally if there's a misfire, it'll disable Stabilitrac, and you'll get an indicator in the dash that says Stabilitrac disabled. Well, we'll have a look at misfire monitors to see if there's any cases or if there's any history here. Go into engine, go into functional tests. No, it's under data. And misfire data. So GM will actually display the number of misfires over the last 10 drive cycles in this misfire list. Misfire on cylinder 8, 3,675 misfires on cylinder 8. It's 2, 4, 6, and 8. That whole bank is showing misfires. 8, 29, 33, and 3, 36, 75. But over here on cylinder 7 we got misfires on all sides of this engine. 5,955 misfires. Interesting. I better have a talk with this customer. So we're looking underneath this truck for a potential oil leak. There is some oil leaking from the rear of the engine. Looks like probably rear seal or rear main seal housing, but it's not serious. I would never recommend replacing that for that little bit. That's a minor issue. And then we're looking at the tranny cooler line, and it looks like the upper line that goes to the rad is rusted and compromised in this area here above the frame rail. So from the cooler to the rad, these ones are actually pretty decent. I'll spray some lubricant on them. Let's make sure the compressor turns. It does. And let's see, there's something interesting here. Look at this axle shaft. That shouldn't be sticking out that far. That's probably why his four-wheel drive isn't working. It looks like a used differential was put in there. But there's something wrong with that. That axle shaft should not be sticking out that far. I don't know what's going on in there. But Maybe he'll have to take that back to where it was done if he's got any kind of warranty on it. Time for a phone call. So I managed to get the intermediate section of this axle shaft out of here. And everything fell apart into the drain bucket here when I found all these pieces in the drain bucket. I think there's still something missing here, because this snap ring should be on the axle shaft down there. Seems to me that there's a thrust washer or something missing here. I'm going to have to look it up in the service literature. So this design on this 2011 is changed from earlier years. I have an older one. The older one had an axle gear on the side here with that C-lock in it. This one slides this whole gear back and forth to engage and disengage. But there's got to be something missing here, because this snap ring goes in this groove, and the snap ring is designed to work inside a gear of some kind. Otherwise the axle shaft will just pull out like it has. So something's amiss here. I wonder if they took this shaft out of the wrong type of diff, because I got another diff over here on the floor, or a portion of it, that I took out of my tickle trunk. And this design is the older design, and that snap ring is on here. So something's wrong. Either this is the wrong shaft in that differential, or there's a washer or something that's missing in there. So I got an exploded image from the dealer, and all it shows is this thrust washer, which we can see is bent here. You can see it's not supposed to be concave like that. And this snap ring, which I just dropped on the floor, is all that holds this axle in. This snap ring used to slide right into the inner gear. Like I said, this used to be two pieces in here. It used to be an inner and outer sliding collar. Now they made it one gear. So this just slides to disengage and engage, but the axle had pulled out to the point where it was at the end of the spline here, and it hasn't damaged it. So the dealership has this snap ring and this washer, so we're going to see what it looks like when it gets here. So I got the new thrust washer from GM and the new snap ring. This thrust washer is considerably smaller, fits a lot snugger on the shaft, and that's what keeps that axle shaft from falling out against with that snap ring. So that snap ring goes like that. This washer, as you can see, is convex, I think from somebody trying to knock the axle shaft out. So we'll reassemble it with the new parts, and hopefully that's all we need. So there's a new thrust washer in there and the new snap ring in there. I think somebody tried to knock this axle shaft out, and that's what bent that washer. I'm going to connect the housing to the axle motor here, because I've got it in four-wheel drive right now, so that actually slides the collar out. So I'm going to put it in two-wheel drive electrically to draw this motor back in, so that this piece can sit in its proper spot. It'll be easier to get it in the vehicle then. I wonder if there's supposed to be a spring on that. I don't think so, but I better check. So there's the housing ready to go back in. Like I said, I put it back in two-wheel drive, so that retracted the motor so that the shaft is not as long. And hopefully I can get it back in there. It came out, so it should go back in. So there's the housing back installed. It went in pretty easy. If you hold the axle shaft up with a tie wrap, you got more than enough room to drop this side down and get it out. So it's in two-wheel drive right now, so the axle is turning free. If I put it in four-wheel drive, then that actuator will push the fork and the gear to mesh with the output shaft on the axle side gear inside the diff. So we'll bolt up the axle shaft and we should be good to go. So I cut out that section of rusty cooler line because it's easier, because the rest of the line is in good shape. Right where it went over top of the frame cross member there, it was rusted. But from here on it was good, and from here up to the cooler was good. to change the actual line would require removal of the grill and stuff, so I'm just going to put in a piece of line and a couple of compression unions. Well, there's a new piece of replacement line. I use a piece of coated line in there, a couple of 3/8 compression unions. Just going to clean up the oil a little bit, top up the tranny, top up the front diff, and then we should be good. So there's it running in 4-wheel drive. All 4 tires turning as they should. Should be good now. So it's got new plugs in it, new wires in it, code's cleared, and it's still counting misfires on cylinder 7 and 8. It's counted up to 4 misfires on cylinder 7. I got a custom data list here. Let's go into the full data list. Should have just went back into the full data list. It's going to go back to the same 8 data parameters, I'm sure. So misfires on number 8, history 8. It's showing misfires on number 8 cylinder quite consistently. And you can feel it stumbling. Let's see if it's running lean. Check the fuel trims. I just started it, so it's not even warm yet. Like, it's warm but not hot. So they're right at the top here. Short-term fuel trim is negative, is 0. Long-term fuel trim is 0. So their fuel trims aren't skewed, so it's not trying to correct for a rich or a lean condition or a false rich or lean condition. You can definitely feel the miss in it. Now it's counted 10 misfires on number 8 cylinder. I'll have to check the history and see. I think it was number 8 that had the most misfires in history before. Let's have a look at that recording. So here's the recording that I saved before I cleared the codes. So it had a history of 3,675 misfires on number 8 and 5,955 misfires on number 7. Those are 2 opposite banks. What are the chances that we got 2 slightly plugged cats? Misfires on number 1. So that's engine vacuum at an idle. It's twitching a little tiny bit, but that could be just because the RPM is actually fluctuating slightly. It's not a completely dead cylinder, but it is definitely missing on what shows on the scan tool as number 8 cylinder. It could be sticky valves, valve seat issues. I don't think it's ignition related. It doesn't appear to be fuel related because the fuel trims look normal. I'm going to take this for a road test and see how it runs, feels performance wise. So this is the recording on the road test. You'll notice significant misfires recorded on cylinder 8 and 7, 439 in cylinder 7, 306 on cylinder 8. But there's also misfires reported on cylinders 7, 6, 9, and 1. Even 2 misfires on cylinder 3. So I'm starting to lean towards a possible restricted cat, or both cats could be restricted. It does feel lazy when you accelerate, like it doesn't have the horsepower or power it should have. So I'm going to set this up to do an exhaust back pressure test. The fuel trims don't go positive when it lacks power, or under any condition the fuel trims all stay within about 5 to 10%, less than 10%, around 5%. So there's the cat on the passenger side. I was hoping to be able to just drill a hole in front of the cat, but that's not convenient. So next option is to remove the oxygen sensor in front of the cat, which is
probably easier accessed through the wheel well on the passenger side. The one on this side is a little bit, and it's smoking hot right now, so I'm going to let this cool off, and I think I'm going to take out the oxygen sensor on the right side because number 8's on this side. That's right, it's number 7's on this side. So maybe I'll take this one out here and put the pressure transducer in the O2 sensor bung. Just want to let it cool off a bit. So I've installed a fitting in place of the forward oxygen sensor, got it just hanging here. It's definitely not running rich, it's nice and gray. And we're going to start it up with this pressure gauge on here and have a look at system pressure. Shut off this light on the gauge. Normally it should be less than about 0.5 at an idle at the most, and less than 1 at 2500 RPM with no load. We'll have a look. Well, there's the pressure gauge at an idle. Doesn't even move. There's a rattle in the engine. Oh, definitely the exhaust is not restricted, that's for sure. So we're going to try an injector flush, I guess. So I'm running an injector cleaner through the injectors now. I got the fuel pump disabled by removing the 25 amp fuse 21 over here. That is the fuel pump control module main power fuse. And I dialed up about, I think, 55 pounds of fuel pressure. So it's going to take about 15-20 minutes to run this liter of cleaner through. I'll show you what I'm using for cleaner. So this is what I'm using in the injector cleaner unit. A couple of ounces of this to 3/4 of a liter of clean gasoline, and just simply disable the fuel pump. Dial up fuel pressure that's slightly less. Anyways, we'll let it run out of fuel. So while this injector flush is running through, I thought I'd have a look at what could potentially be causing misfires on this engine and look at some case histories on identifics. Dirty injectors, failed lifters, broken rocker, valve springs. Now, I did say it sounded like it had a rattle in it at higher RPM. I didn't pay any attention to it because it's quiet at an idle. There's no valve train noise at an idle for sure, but we could have a valve spring or lifter problem, but it's got to be on more than one cylinder because 7 and 8 show misfires. I'm running the scan tool on it now, and interestingly, with the injector flushing equipment on there, the misfires have diminished significantly. Counted 10. There's 4 on number 7 and 8 on number 8, but it's not currently misfiring. So that could be promising. Maybe there is some crap in the injectors and the flush is helping, but we'll see when we get through this. Otherwise, everything that I've already suggested doing, I didn't check the alcohol content, but I did reset the fuel trims. Normally if the alcohol content is off, because this could be E85, it runs extremely lean. Anyways, gotta answer the phone. This thing definitely has a rattle in it. Sounds like it's from the passenger side and the driver's side. That's at about 2,000 RPM. I'm going to try and pinpoint where it might be from. Still shows misfires on cylinder 8 and cylinder 7. At about 2,000 RPM, there's a definite rattle on both sides of the engine from the back. Sounds about rear cylinder, so I'm starting to lean towards it might be a valve train issue, valve spring issue. You got to talk to the customer.